This city probably has the most interesting and intricate architecture of any city that we've been to so far on our trip. This is the Golden City of Jaisalmer. Compared to some of our other stops, this is also one of the nicest, quietest places that we've been here in India. So we're gonna spend about a week volunteering at a local hotel and exploring the sights here in the Golden City. You've probably noticed the most impressive part of Jaisalmer here. This is the fort, Jaisalmer Fort, and it sticks up right out of the middle of the city. But actually, for hundreds and hundreds of years, that was all of the city. The city was first built in the 12th century and was designed as kind of a stopping point along the Silk Road. For those who don't know, the Silk Road is actually more of a system or network of roads leading from the Far East, Japan, China, Korea, all the way into the heart of the Mediterranean, where they would have sold things like silk, spices, or gold to the people living there. One of those branches was right here in West India, in what is known as the Thar Desert, which you maybe can see spreading out behind me. It's monsoon season, so it's actually pretty green right now, which is really nice to see. But yeah, this is the desert of India. The Thar Desert stretches all across this whole area, and it covers about 5% of the total land area of India. It's not all a true desert. Some of it is semi-desert, technically speaking, but it's still this very vast, open, and arid area. You can really imagine yourself back in those days, traveling along the Silk Road and needing a place to stop over, rest your camels or horses or cows or whatever you had with you, and take a break from the heat. Besides that, numerous different empires and kingdoms were at war with each other at the time, and there were bandits running around, and they needed a place to protect trade in the area. Eventually, this system kind of fell apart as trade started to go more overseas, especially with colonization by the Portuguese, Dutch, and the British here in the Indian Ocean. Once Mumbai or Bombay became a big port city, this city of Jaisalmer started to lose its importance and influence, and hasn't quite fully recovered from that.
The interesting thing is when they start to move the things by ship, this city froze in time. So the buildings, the architecture didn't really change much. So now when the tourism come back here, we can have an authentic look of the building and can have really an image how it was before. So Trevor mentioned people still live inside the fort, and it's really special because in all the world, there's only few forts or castles who still people live inside.
The fact that people actually still live here in the fort makes it, unlike any other fort, really easy to imagine what life could have been like here at its heyday. Imagine walking around the Silk Road and stopping in a place like this and meeting the local cows and buying some fabric and then heading off to the next stop. This is, I get tingles thinking about it. This really feels like being back in that era. Of course, the fort is interesting just to walk around in and explore, but there's also a couple little points of interest. For example, there is the Queen's Palace and the King's Palace, which have museums built inside. We actually didn't go in either of those because they cost 600 rupees per person for tourists. And from what we heard, they're pretty much the same as the museum that we went to in Jodhpur. So if you want to see the kinds of things they might have in there, then check out that video for the weapons and armor and things like that that you can find here. But one thing that's really unique to Jaisalmer is the Jain temples. Now, if you're like most people, you've probably never even heard of Jainism, but it's actually a pretty old religion. Its origins are here in India, and though it's not really sure when it started, most scholars believe that it traces its origins back past the 9th century BCE, meaning it's probably around 3,000 years old. The reason for all of the Jain temples in Jaisalmer Fort is actually pretty interesting. The Jains were regarded as being very trustworthy, and they were known as very good silver workers. So a lot of the higher-ups, the Maharajas or Rajputs here in Jaisalmer, actually really wanted the Jains to come into their city and build a temple. So they supported them in doing so. And when looking around the temples, you might actually see some Hindu gods and goddesses in the stonework. That's because the Jains didn't really particularly care if people worshipped other gods. They were more focused on their ideals. So when people wanted and asked for their gods to be in the Jain temples, they usually agreed. We're now here at our first main stop outside of the fort. This is Mandir Palace, or Jawahir Villas. It's the same location, split up into a few different areas. And this is probably one of the most impressive examples of the architecture here in Jaisalmer that I've seen. Really intricate details all along the walls, and lots of cool little statues and things hidden around the place. Also, aside from the honking outside, it's really quiet here today. I think we're the only visitors here.
Yes, it's really rare because, you know, India have a lot of population, and many places we visit is always a lot of local domestic tourists. But here, it's like just us. It's so nice, it's like so quiet. And we have all the places to see only for us.
This is also the site of the big Badal Villas tower, which you may have seen when we were up on the fort as well. It might be hard to see in amongst the city, but it's one of the largest buildings, largest structures outside of the fort. And it's really, really, like the rest of this place, detailed and intricately carved stonework, sandstone. So inside the actual structure, there are at least two, I believe, little museum areas. And this first one here is pretty small, but it's got some interesting things. Some things like some silver furniture and some cool paintings, big paintings, and at least one cool little piece of technology which I didn't really think of, which was an old school blower for cool air, which was pretty cool. So there is another little tiny kind of museum part here as well, and this one is a little longer, a little bigger. Weaponry and cooking utensils and things like that. It's a lot of cool little artifacts here.
Jewelry here, also. We have some jewelry here, some gems. It's well protected, locked up.
Yeah, this window is extra secure. The palace was actually built in the beginning of the 20th century, so it's much newer than the fort, for example. And so they also have some kind of more modern antiques, things like typewriters and little film cameras.
Radio. Cinema loudspeaker from USA, Bell and Hall.
The tower area itself is actually still a private residence, so we're not allowed to go in and check it out, but the museums nearby kind of loop around it. And there is also a hotel set up on the other side of the complex, which is still really beautiful. Outside of our budget, but maybe something to consider if you're heading to Jaisalmer. But this is just one of a few famous places here outside the city walls. So we're gonna check out the next one. Our next stop here is at Nath Haveli, which is another of the buildings built outside of the fort. And this one is a little bit special. It was built by two brother architects who worked together to design and create this beautiful house, but they didn't always have the same idea about what exactly to put on the actual building. So some little details here and there are a little bit off and a little bit different, which is fun to see. For example, the reliefs on the very front of the elephant don't quite match. They're almost the same, but one of them is a little bit out and one of them is more recessed, and there are other little details like that hidden throughout the building. So it's kind of hard to show you on camera from here because some of the details are really small, but if you're ever here in Jaisalmer, then you can come and try and find them. It's fun. And if you come to Jaisalmer, you'll see the word Haveli all over. A lot of hotels use it, our hotel uses it, and you'll just run into the word a lot. It seems to mean something like mansion or townhouse, something like that. Basically, it's a big structure, multi-storied structure that's built around a central courtyard. Inside here in the central courtyard area is much cooler than outside. It's nice and refreshing. Good place to just relax for a second. And you can tell why they adopted this style of architecture. Also, it's just beautiful.
One of the cool things here is almost all the building is made by the sandstone. So the city look like it's like gold, like yellowish color. It's really beautiful.
And it's not just the older buildings that they do this with. Still, modern buildings that are under construction are being made with the same materials and a lot of the same decorations, which means that just walking through just a normal part of the city, it's still this beautiful color and beautiful architecture.
Mm-hmm. And here we feel it's like more quiet, and I think it's less cars and tuk-tuks honking, but I think the sandstone like blocks the sound and feels like more quiet and calm and feel cooler too at night.
So for our time here in Jaisalmer, as I think I mentioned, we're actually volunteering here at a hotel. This is Oasis Hotel Haveli, and it's right here, obviously next to the fort, so great view, especially for sunsets. And yeah, it's a good little spot to be.
Yeah, and for all another places to visit outside of the fort is like 10 minutes walk, and we could see all from here.
If you're wondering how we're volunteering here, we did it through World Packers. It's low season right now, so there's not a lot to do with the actual rooms, but during high season, they also do need help with preparing rooms for guests and things like that.
It's pretty nice. We get free accommodation and actually a private room, one room. If in the high season, I think we'll be not able to rent for the volunteers, but we have our own room and we get the whole 3 meals per day and a few cup of chais during the break times. It's really nice.
Yeah. And probably the coolest thing so far was our host was gracious enough to give us a big discount on one of the camel safaris that he runs, and so he brought us out there.
Yes, it was really good. Really recommend. Now we are in Kudara. They say it's an empty village or ghost village. It's pretty big here and must be living many people, but they say suddenly something happened, have some terrorists, and in one night all one gone. And now like people try to live here again before, but no one can live here anymore.
Every time someone tries to stay here, something happens and they end up all leaving. So there's a few different stories, but the story that our host told us was that a Mughal warrior coming here to the village met a girl from a different caste at the watering hole and asked for some water from the well to give his horse, and when she lifted up the water to give the horse, her veil blew back and he saw her face and decided to marry her. But since she was from a different caste, he wasn't allowed to. So when he went back to the village and asked to marry the girl, they said, come back in a few days, and when you return, we will set up the wedding. But when he left, he came back to find the village empty. Who knows if that's the real story? Who knows if there is a real story? But all that we know now is that for about 300 years, no one has lived here.
Yeah, and it's pretty big, really. I can see all the ruins around for, I don't know, kilometers and kilometers.
Yeah, it's much bigger than we were expecting. And there are a few parts here which have some modern structures, and they've been all recreated to match the way that it was built in the past. Our host said that they tried to build them with some modern styles, but they kept collapsing for whatever reason. So once they built them in the traditional style, then they seemed to stay up.
Mystery.
This is actually a pretty good example of, not a castle or a fort, but just how regular people would have built their structures back in the day. Actually, I'm kind of surprised at how straight and angular everything is, given that they're not using any water or mortar. All of the stones are just stacked up on each other, but it's pretty accurate and still standing. This structure is kind of interesting. Where the girl would have taken water out of the well to give the horse may have been something like this, which is kind of like a step well, but with just one set of steps. I don't know if you can see all the way on the bottom. Oh, there's a pigeon with a nest. Hey, bud.
This is small camels. I don't know, I thought camel was bigger. There's so many flies on that camel.
So actually we're not going to ride the camels today because we don't really need to, and it's just us. So we don't need to go through the extra hassle of riding them. We don't really need to, but it is fun to see them.
They're cute. It's my first time seeing a camel in, I think, not in the zoo, like in the wild. But they're small than I expect. I don't know. I would like a cartoon movie image of like a big animal like elephant. I know elephant's like the biggest animal. So I don't know. Is it like a big cow? Because we see so many cows here in India, and they're just a little more bigger than the cows. My impression.
They're much taller than a cow, but they're not that much like bigger around actually.
Yeah. We come until here by car, and now we are switching to the jeep to go to the real desert.
Very different road.
Yeah, this is
Normally you go with the sand, but here you go with the dry with the stone road.
This is not the same as back in town.
Very welcome.
Well, we've arrived here at the sand dunes, and they're spectacular. Our host actually brought us to a part of the sand dunes which are not the like famous side, not the touristy side where most trips go. It's where only his trips go. He actually made the road here himself way back in the 90s. So we are really out here more or less alone. All only tracks besides ours are animal tracks.
The gazelle?
I believe so.
It's like a heart.
Gazelle or maybe goat.
Goat?
But I didn't see any of the goats or other animals. I only saw wild gazelles on our way out here.
It's like a Wow, wild.
Oh, that's a dog or fox maybe.
Fox? Dog?
Let's see.
Wow. It looks like the gazelle, but running. It's more deep.
Wow. Now, I do think there's one important thing to mention when we are out here in the desert, and that is that we've actually been in the Thar Desert the entire time. To clarify, technically, a desert is any region which receives less than 25 centimeters of rain per year. And this whole area, well, receives about 10 to 50. So large chunks of it are what are called semi-desert, and large chunks are true desert. So just because there's no sand dunes doesn't mean it's not a desert. But here we get to experience both sides, which is really cool. So people who are here in Jaisalmer, if you ask like, where's the Thar Desert? And they might say it's over there. They're talking about the sand dunes, but actually you're in it. This is all desert, even if it doesn't look like it, because it's monsoon season.
It's like really fun, but we come to the desert in the monsoon season here in India, so it's like way more green.
That was really fun, and something that I wasn't sure I wanted to do, but after doing it, I'm really glad that we took the opportunity to head out there.
It's my way first desert experience, and we see some wild animals.
It was really cool. But now we're back here at the hotel. We're gonna relax, rest a little bit, maybe eat some good food, and we've been enjoying helping out a little bit in the kitchen as well. We learned how to make chapati.
Yes, and aloe curry.
Yeah, that was good. So we're gonna eat, rest, and enjoy the sunset. After about a week here, we can pretty safely say that Jaisalmer has been one of the most relaxing stops here in India. The sounds are a little less prevalent, it's a little quieter, and right now, during monsoon season, it's not so busy.
We have a privilege to visit some places, not so much people, and just explore, calm in our time.
Exactly. There's a goat somewhere there. Also, because it's not so busy, there's a lot of goats and cows and things just wandering around the city, which is always fun to see.
Yeah, actually here I think it's a city with most cows we saw here in India so far.
They own the streets here, really. Just falling asleep in the middle of the road at night and things like that.
It's like 10 cows like in the middle of the road. They decide tonight we'll sleep here, and yes, we'll sleep here.
So, although we are really gonna miss Jaisalmer and our relaxing time here, we're gonna head up even further north and hopefully see some other quiet, nice, relaxing cities here in India. But we'll save that for next time. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching, and
See you at our next destination.
ciao.
Ciao.